On May 25, 2003, as the sun set over Quatro de Fevereiro Airport in Angola, something unprecedented happened. A Boeing 727 aircraft worth millions of dollars taxied onto the runway without clearance, turned away from the tower, and took off. The plane disappeared into the evening sky, never to be seen again. No distress call, no flight plan, no explanation. This wasn't a small private plane. This was a 153-foot commercial aircraft with the tail number N844AA. And it didn't just vanish from the airport. It vanished from the face of the earth. What happened to this massive aircraft? Who took it? And how does a plane the size of a Boeing 727 simply disappear? The Boeing 727 was not a new aircraft. Built in 1975, it had served American Airlines for 25 years before being sold. By 2003, this aging aircraft found itself in Angola, a country still recovering from a brutal civil war that had ended just the year before. The plane had been sitting on the tarmac at Quatro de Fevereiro Airport for over a year, racking up unpaid airport fees. Its engines were covered with red plastic, a sign that the aircraft was not in regular service. The once proud airliner, designed to carry up to 189 passengers, now sat neglected, its American Airlines livery faded and partially painted over. This aircraft, tail number N844AA, was owned by a Miami-based company called Aerospace Sales and Leasing. They had leased it to TAG Angola Airlines, who subsequently fell behind on payments. As a result, the plane became a stationary fixture at the airport, a giant aluminum reminder of unpaid debts and bureaucratic limbo. What made this plane valuable wasn't its condition as a passenger aircraft, but its potential. Even a neglected Boeing 727 contained valuable parts and materials worth millions of dollars. Its two Pratt & Whitney JT-8D engines alone were highly valuable in the aviation market. As the plane sat idle month after month, few paid attention to it. It was just another piece of aviation equipment waiting for paperwork to determine its fate, until someone decided to take matters into their own hands. May 25, 2003. As evening approached in Luanda, Angola, workers at the airport noticed unusual activity around the dormant Boeing 727. Two men were seen boarding the aircraft. One was identified as American aircraft mechanic and pilot Ben Charles Padilla. The other, John Michael Mutantu, was from the Republic of Congo. Neither man was certified to fly a Boeing 727, which typically requires a three-person crew to operate. At approximately 6 p.m. local time, something unexpected happened. The aircraft's engine started up. Without communicating with the control tower, without filing a flight plan, without any clearance whatsoever, the Boeing 727 began to taxi toward the runway. Airport officials watched in disbelief as the massive aircraft, with its lights off, maneuvered erratically onto the runway. Before anyone could react, the plane accelerated down the runway and took off, heading southwest over the Atlantic Ocean. And then, nothing. No radio contact, no transponder signal. The aircraft and whoever was flying it vanished into the darkening sky, never to be seen again. The airport immediately alerted authorities. What had just happened was unprecedented in modern aviation history. The unauthorized theft of a commercial aircraft in broad daylight. News of the theft quickly reached American intelligence agencies. This wasn't just any aircraft theft. It was 2003, less than 2 years after the September 11th attacks. The idea of a commercial aircraft disappearing raised immediate terrorism concerns. The FBI and CIA launched investigations. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security searched for any trace of the aircraft. Intelligence satellites scanned Africa and the surrounding waters for any sign of the missing 727. Angola, still rebuilding after decades of civil war, had limited resources to conduct a thorough search. The country's radar coverage was spotty at best, making it difficult to track where the plane might have gone after takeoff. Initial theories focused on several possibilities. Had the plane crashed shortly after takeoff? Was it flown to a hidden airstrip somewhere in Africa? Had it been stolen for parts in an elaborate insurance scheme? Could it be related to terrorism? Days turned into weeks, and an international search yielded nothing. No wreckage, no distress signals, no reports of a 727 landing at any airport in Africa or beyond. It was as if the massive aircraft had simply vanished from existence. To understand this mystery, we need to know more about one of the key figures, Ben Charles Padilla. Padilla was a 50-year-old American aircraft mechanic, flight engineer, and pilot from Pensacola, Florida. He had decades of experience working with aircraft, though he wasn't certified to fly a Boeing 727 as the main pilot. Padilla had been hired by Aerospace Sales and Leasing to repossess the aircraft and prepare it for a flight to South Africa, where it would receive maintenance before returning to service. This was a legitimate job. Repossessing an aircraft for non-payment is standard practice in the aviation industry. According to his family, Padilla had experience in aircraft repossession. His sister, Benita Padilla Kirkland, described him as an experienced aviation professional who had worked in difficult conditions around the world. In the weeks before the disappearance, Padilla had been working to get the aircraft ready for flight. He hired John Michael Mutantu as his assistant. Together, they performed maintenance on the aging 727, trying to make it airworthy again. The key question remains, was Padilla planning to steal the aircraft, or did something go terribly wrong during what was supposed to be routine maintenance? In the post-9/11 world, the first and most alarming theory was that the aircraft had been stolen for terrorism. A Boeing 727, even an older model, could be loaded with explosives or used as a weapon. The plane's fuel capacity alone made it potentially devastating if used in an attack. The timing fueled these concerns. In May 2003, the U.S. was deeply involved in the war on terror, with military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Intelligence agencies feared the aircraft might reappear as a weapon targeting American interests. However, as weeks passed with no attacks and no sightings, this theory began to lose credibility. Terrorist organizations typically claim responsibility for their actions, and no group ever claimed involvement in the 727's disappearance. Furthermore, the aircraft would have needed to refuel somewhere. A Boeing 727 has a range of approximately 2,700 miles, not enough to cross the Atlantic Ocean without stopping. Any landing for refueling would likely have been noticed and reported. As terrorism fears subsided, investigators turned to other possibilities. Another theory centered on insurance fraud. Could someone have orchestrated the theft as part of an insurance scheme? The aircraft, despite its age and condition, was insured. If someone wanted to collect on that insurance without actually losing the plane, they might fake its theft or disappearance. However, this theory had significant flaws. First, the insurance value of the aircraft was likely less than its value in parts. Second, insurance companies investigate claims thoroughly, especially for something as valuable as an aircraft. Without wreckage or proof of loss, collecting insurance would be difficult. Moreover, Aerospace Sales and Leasing, the company that owned the aircraft, appeared genuinely concerned about recovering their asset. They cooperated fully with authorities and showed no signs of involvement in fraud. The insurance fraud theory, while initially plausible, didn't hold up under scrutiny. One of the most persistent theories involves drug trafficking. Angola's location in Africa made it a potential transit point for drug shipments between South America and Europe. A Boeing 727 could carry an enormous quantity of drugs, potentially worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, there was precedent for such operations. In 2008, 5 years after the Angola incident, authorities discovered a Boeing 727 that had been used for drug trafficking, abandoned in the Mali desert. That aircraft had been modified to carry drugs from Venezuela to West Africa. Could N844AA have met a similar fate? Perhaps it was flown to a remote airstrip, unloaded and then abandoned or dismantled to hide the evidence. This theory gained traction because of Angola's limited radar coverage and the prevalence of unmonitored airstrips throughout Africa. A skilled pilot could potentially fly under the radar, literally, and land at a prepared location. However, no evidence has ever emerged linking the missing 727 to drug operations. And the question remains, if the plane was used for drug trafficking, where did it end up? Perhaps the most practical theory involves the aircraft's value as parts. Even an aging Boeing 727 contains valuable components. Its engines, avionics, and various systems could be worth millions of dollars on the secondary market. In regions with less stringent aviation regulations, these parts could be sold and installed in other aircraft without proper documentation. This theory suggests that Padilla and Mutantu, or others who may have been involved, stole the aircraft to strip it for parts. They could have flown it to a remote location, disassembled it, and sold the components through black market channels. This explanation accounts for why the aircraft was never seen again. It may have been systematically taken apart, leaving nothing recognizable as a Boeing 727. The parts theory also explains the choice of aircraft. An abandoned 727 with unpaid fees was the perfect target, valuable enough to be worth stealing but not actively monitored or maintained. Whatever happened to the aircraft, one tragic certainty remains. Ben Charles Padilla and John Michael Mutantu have never been seen again. Padilla's family has spent years searching for answers. His sister, Benita Padilla Kirkland, pursued the case relentlessly, even appearing on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360 Degrees in 2004 to bring attention to her brother's disappearance. The family has considered various possibilities. Could Padilla have been forced to fly the aircraft against his will? Did he intentionally steal the plane for reasons unknown? Was there a mechanical failure that led to a crash? Is he still alive somewhere, unable or unwilling to return? In 2010, 7 years after the disappearance, the FBI officially closed its investigation without determining what happened to the aircraft or its occupants. Padilla's family continues to hope for answers, but with each passing year, the likelihood of discovering the truth diminishes. While the disappearance of N844AA is unique in many ways, it's not the only aviation mystery that remains unsolved. In 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared while flying from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing with 239 people aboard. Despite one of the most extensive searches in aviation history, the main wreckage has never been found, though some debris eventually washed ashore in the Indian Ocean. In 1945, Flight 19, a group of 5 U.S. Navy torpedo bombers, vanished during a training exercise over the Bermuda Triangle. Neither the aircraft nor the 14 crew members were ever found. What makes the Angola 727 case different is that it involves theft rather than an accident or navigation error. Someone deliberately took this aircraft, and they did so right under the noses of airport personnel. More than 2 decades have passed since the Boeing 727 disappeared from Angola, but occasional leads still emerge. In 2005, reports surfaced of a possible sighting in Guinea, but investigation revealed it was a different aircraft. In 2010, another rumor suggested the plane was hidden in a hangar in Tanzania. Again, no evidence supported this claim. Over the years, aviation enthusiasts and amateur investigators have scoured satellite imagery of Africa, looking for anything resembling an abandoned 727. Despite these efforts, no credible evidence of the aircraft's location has emerged. The U.S. State Department maintains a reward for information leading to the recovery of the aircraft or the determination of its fate. The exact amount hasn't been disclosed, but it's believed to be substantial. How does a 153-foot-long commercial aircraft simply vanish? The persistence of this mystery comes down to several factors. First, timing and location. The theft occurred in Angola, a country with limited radar coverage and resources for tracking aircraft. In 2003, global aviation tracking was far less sophisticated than today. Second motive remains unclear. Without knowing why someone would steal this particular aircraft, it's difficult to determine where they might have taken it. Third, the vastness of potential search areas. Africa is an enormous continent with remote regions where an aircraft could land undetected. The Atlantic Ocean, if the plane crashed there, is similarly vast and deep. Finally, time itself compounds the mystery. With each passing year, evidence deteriorates, memories fade, and the trail grows colder. The disappearance of Boeing 727-N844AA remains one of aviation's most baffling mysteries. A massive aircraft, 2 men, and millions of dollars in value all vanished without a trace. Was it terrorism that never materialized? A drug smuggling operation gone wrong? A parts theft scheme? Or something else entirely? The truth may be lost to history, joining other great unsolved mysteries. Or perhaps, someday, in a remote corner of Africa or at the bottom of the Atlantic, evidence will emerge that finally explains what happened on that May evening in 2003. Until then, the 727 that took off without clearance and flew into the sunset remains aviation's ghost ship, a modern Flying Dutchman that reminds us that even in our age of constant surveillance and tracking, it's still possible for something as large as a commercial aircraft to simply disappear.